Welcome to Monster Monday. All right, this is gonna be my last. This is gonna be my last dead movie from this franchise. I thought about it. I was like, do I really want to do the Nick Cannon Day of the Dead? Do I really want to do like Day of the Dead, the newest one, or do I want to do Day of the Dead 2 Contagion or whatever the fuck it's called? Or any of those Night of the Living Dead movies, the one with Sid Haig, the 3D one, or Reanimated, the animation one, or I own all of them. I have all these fucking movies, and I can't bring myself to watch any of them. Resurrection, I think, is one of them. I think is that what it's called, or some shit. I don't know, but I can't do it. I'm not sitting through them. Fuck it. Maybe one day. Maybe I'll do some like, I know like that Chris Stuckman guy. Doesn't he do like hilarosity or so however fucking says it, where he reviews really bad movies on purpose just to make fun of them. I could see that happening one day. Right now I'm done. I'm done with the franchise. I'm just done doing fucking zombie movies for. What are we on? This is the 8th straight week. 2 straight months I've been doing this franchise. So I'm just done with it. I've had it. I'm moving on. I have a whole fuckload of movies for Monster Monday that I would love to do that I've been looking at in my collection. Like, oh, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do this. In fact, I wanted to do them all. But I picked Night and Dawn. So let's get to this. We have got Zack Snyder's directorial debut. Now, Zack Snyder's name kind of raises a bunch of controversy pretty much out the gate. But at one point, Zack Snyder was fucking beloved. You know, when he made Dawn of the Dead and then 300 and Watchmen, and people were blowing this guy left, right, and center. Now, I'm a big fan of Zack Snyder. I think that he's a visionary director. You know, there might be some story choices or certain things, or maybe some people bring up like behind the scenes stuff. I don't really care about any of that shit. Like, it comes to me, it's like, did I enjoy the movie? And outside of Justice League, which we're getting his cut of it, so we'll see. I'm to be determined on that one, because the Joss Whedon finished Justice League I was not a fan of, like, at all. But Batman versus Superman's Zack Snyder cut, like the ultimate Justice cut, whatever, I loved that, actually, weirdly. And then, I even love Sucker Punch. I don't see the problem, but we've talked about this enough. Now that I'm actually doing a Zack Snyder film for once, it's the first Zack Snyder films I've ever talked about on the channel. I definitely am a fan. I'm definitely a big fan. But I always have an outside opinion. I also loved freaking 300 Rise of an Empire. I know that wasn't directed by Snyder, but I'm just pointing that out because I have different taste. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if it's bad taste. I don't know if it's good, but I don't know if that even exists. Is there such a good thing as good taste? I guess if it lines up with yours, right? If somebody has good taste, that means it lines up with yours. You've never met a person who has completely different taste in movies than you, and then you go, oh, this person has really good taste in movies. It only has good taste in movies if it lines up with what you like. So the whole, oh, he has good taste. You mean you have good taste, and anyone who agrees with you is right. Anyway, I am looking forward to Army of the Dead, which is Zack Snyder's new zombie film, because, this was so fucking highly regarded when it came out. Like, people were not happy this was getting made. This was Dawn of the Dead, man. This was like a Jaws. This was like something people were like, do not remake this fucking movie. Don't do it. When Savini did Night, people were like, well, it's Savini, Romero's involved, this and that. This one was like studios took over, and they hired some new guy that had only done music videos, and it was like, oh no, what are they going to do with this? But I do think people were kind of coming off of the high of Texas Chainsaw, because that was so well received, and And I feel like because that came out, then this came out, I think people were a lot more open to remakes. Like if they came out of the gate and they made a bunch of really shitty remakes, even House of Wax, which I think was 2005, which I think would be the year after this. Are my numbers adding up here? I think this is 2004, right? And then Texas Chainsaw is 2003. I hope that's accurate. I think that is. If it is, I know a lot of people don't like House of Wax, but I think House of Wax is pretty freaking awesome. But I just think they made a lot of really cool remakes of kind of classic films in a row, and that very much opened up people. And then you had Zombies Halloween in 2007, which was only like, another 2 years later, and a lot of people enjoyed the hell out of that. So they made a lot of pretty well received remakes in the mid 2000s, and this was definitely one of them. But this one's got Sarah Polley, it's got Jack Weber, it's got Ving Rhames, it's got Mekhi Phifer, it's got freaking Doug from House of Cards, who plays CJ in this. And CJ is a character that I really like a lot. Like, the way that he's portrayed in this, I was very, very happy that he was redeemed in the end. I liked that he became, I thought that they were going to go one way with him. Like when they let him out, I thought for sure he was going to turn. But the more you got to know his character and his personality, I just really started to like the guy. Like, yeah, at first he seems like this arrogant, balding, freaking, guy, bully, basically. And that is kind of how he is. But as the movie goes on, I think we get to learn a little bit more and realize he's just scared like everybody else. And he's trying to do what he thinks is right. He even lets them stay. I mean, when they kind of talk him into it, he never really takes horrible advantage of them. He doesn't do anything horribly mean to them. Like, he locks them up because he's like, look, I want to be in charge. I don't want anyone to get killed. I don't want to die. I have no interest in dying. I don't want to get my guys killed. I don't want to get you guys killed. Like, I'll throw you back on the streets because that, to me, is the best thing that's going to keep me alive. It's going to keep my friends alive, whatever. But throughout the movie, they kind of gain a friendship. Like, he's kind of, he's a hard ass, but I really like CJ. And I figured I'll talk about him for a little while because he's probably my favorite character of this movie. And I did really love that they redeemed him in it. We get this, almost what I would consider almost iconic at this point, opening of her going home, getting in bed with her husband, and they're just kind of living this very normal life. And I think that this is where the separation comes from the Romero franchise, especially the Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, whatever, is that by that point we're already in, knee deep in the thick of it. And Snyder decided to take a little bit of a break from that, kind of have ominous foreshadowing of someone coming in the hospital bits, and she doesn't really know, and everything's in order. She goes home to her idealistic suburban neighborhood where she knows the neighbors' kids, and she comes home to her husband who's waiting for her, and they sit down in bed and they watch American Idol or whatever the hell they're watching, and everything is just kind of day to day. It's life. It very much feels like that. And then it's incredible how fast life can be disrupted, how everything can be turned around, how everything can seem perfect and idyllic, but then something happens and boom, within moments your whole life is different, the whole world is different. She wakes up, the neighbor kid has bitten her husband's throat out. It could be her boyfriend, I don't know, doesn't matter, her partner, bites the throat out, and then he turns on her and comes after her. So here she is in love with this guy. They have this great life together, and then she wakes up, and within a minute she has to not only deal with her husband's throat being bit out, the neighbor kid having done it and possibly was abused, because when she walks in the room and her face is all fucked up, they both are like, what has happened to you? Are you okay? She's a cute little freaking kid that lives next door. Of course you're going to be protective over her. But then he comes at her, or she comes at him, boom, rips the throat out. She has to deal with that, which is insane. But then she has to deal with her husband's death, and then eventually her husband coming back and trying to murder her. And then she has to deal with running outside and seeing that this is not just in her household, but in everyone's household. The whole street is chaos. So it goes from kind of like, everyday, average, boring suburban life to chaotic zombie fucking apocalypse. It's a good contrast because that's before the opening credits even take place. And then you got her driving through the city, and we got this really great camera angle where he has fastened this camera to the back of the car as the car drives through the madness. That's a great camera angle, and it adds to the action elements. You can tell watching this movie that this is an action director in the making, because all the action in this movie is so well shot. It's so well conceived. It's very heightened. It's very organized, and it's very easy to digest when you're watching it. You know how chaotic action can be really hard to understand when it's happening. You're like, I can't really see anything. I can't make anything out. Nothing has any directive to it. Like, I'm kind of lost. I don't know what the fuck is going on. Within this, you have very frantic motion. You have very frantic moments, and they just blend seamlessly to the narrative, and you know exactly who's who, what the point is, and what's happening in the moment. Like, nothing is confusing. You know what zombie, you know what character, like, everything is very, very easily, like, recognized and understood. And I think that's great. I mean, that's just a sign of a really talented filmmaker. Those scenes are much, much harder to put together and execute than anyone gives it credit for. So, good there. And when she's driving through, someone's trying to steal her car, somebody gets hit from the side, blows up a gas station next to her. I mean, this is a very high intensity thing. Then we get a naked woman who's walking through the street, homage to, of course, the naked woman in Romero's Night of the Living Dead from '68. And I also didn't even mention that this movie was written completely by James Gunn. I completely forgot about that until I threw this movie on and was like, oh shit, that's right, James Gunn fucking wrote this movie. Dude from Guardians of the Galaxy and Slither and soon the Suicide Squad sequel, and James Gunn. It's crazy. So, great script, great direction. This movie's just great all around. I know this is an asshole moment, and I know that it's like, probably seen as racist or whatever. But dude, when CJ calls Ving Rhames Shaq, that shit killed me. That is so fucking funny. It is so fucking funny. I know people are, oh, what are you trying to say? All black people look the same? Dude, Ving Rhames in this movie looks a fuckload like Shaq. Like, are we really gonna not say that he doesn't? The fact that he calls him Shaq is hilarious. I love it. I laughed so hard this time when he said it. I don't even know how he says it, but it's when they're in the elevator and he's like, something, Shaq. And I was just like, you just called him Shaq. So good. So fucking funny. I have to question whether or not mall security would have guns. Do mall security guards have guns? I don't know. Do they? Maybe. I don't think they do. Maybe they have, like, some on the premises. But in order to carry a weapon, aren't you a different kind of security guard? I don't know. I don't know how any of that shit works. But Michael, played by Jake Weber, is a very smart character. The way that he kind of cozies up, and he doesn't excite or challenge CJ. He comes up to him and he never takes anything personal. he never fights with them. He comes up and he tells him some things like, hey, maybe we should do this. And CJ's like, you don't think I've already fucking thought about that? And Michael's response is like, no doubt. And I'm sure you've already thought about putting signs up on the roof. And then CJ's like, kind of leans forward and he comes and he's just like, all right, well, we can get some paint from this hardware store and this and that. And then Michael spins it around and basically not only affirms that CJ's in charge, but also almost as if like it was his plan to begin with, like CJ's plan. Like it's almost like an inception done right there in real time, which is just great. It's just great all around, man. Like Michael's so smart in this situation, and the way he plays off of CJ and the way CJ plays off, it's very realistic and very cool. And I like that scene a fuckload. And then they go up on the roof, and this is where we meet Andy, the gun store dude, who we always in this movie see at a distance until he's a zombie later in the film. He's always kept across the way, and that's the way our characters know him, so that's how we know him. Like most movies would go over there and we'd kind of spend some time with Andy and we'd get to know him a little bit. We'd see him on the radio talking to people and whatnot, just to kind of get to know him. But they keep him distant because the characters keep him distant, so it keeps us in the same shoes as them. And I think that's another really good thing that Snyder does here, is he plays off to the characters and makes them feel through us as if we are there. And that's yet another, as I said, another sign of a really, really good storyteller filmmaker. Ving Rhames is great in this. Everybody's really great in this. I don't really have a complaint of anyone in this. Now, there are moments in this that I just kind of am like, really, would that happen? Like Mekhi Phifer's chick getting bit, and then he takes her and he like keeps her in a toy store, and like no one sees her again after they had like a scuffle. Like no one got curious. No one got curious when he's like, no, we don't need any help, and leave us alone, and we're just going to be in here by ourselves. And that seems extremely suspect. And with his, I don't know, aggressive as Michael and other people are with the whole biting thing. I mean, you've got freaking Trash Can Man coming in here, and he comes in with his daughter, and he's a super sweet guy, and this chick has lost everything, and one of the characters even has a crush on this chick. She's fucking adorable. I can see why. But they're like, Michael, who's like one of the nicest, smartest guys in the entire fucking movie, immediately is like, I think he's bit. The bite's it. We got to kill him. And he's like, he goes in and he's like, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to take him right now, here and there. So the fact that none of them are pursuant about what has happened to Mekhi Phifer's wife, it just doesn't add up to me. It's very much like, no one's checked on her. This chick who comes in right as the baby's being born, that's the first time anyone's went in there and seen what the fuck was happening. Bullshit. No way. But anyways, I like when they're at the door and they're gonna go outside to help the truck that's coming in, and he goes to open the door and the door's locked, and then he opens it. That's a good gag. That's like subtle comedy, but also like adding to the tension, like at the same time. It's cool. I like that gag. A lot of survivors in this one, so there's a lot of people to kill, which is great. For a zombie movie, I'd like to see a much higher count of people, because I want to see a much higher count of bodies. So to see all these survivors kind of pile in, you got the big fat woman with the freaking eye problem who ends up getting up, and Sarah Polley goes and stabs her through the freaking eyeball with her like a fireplace poker or whatever. Brutal. Good stuff though. And the whole like Michael has come to kill you scene is just so sad. And he's just sitting there and he's like, are you sure it's the bites? Are you sure? And Sarah Polley's like, no, we're not sure. And Jake Weber or Michael or whatever names, I guess, he's like, yes, we're sure. And it's like, are you sure? I mean, they don't know at this point. They have no fucking clue what's actually happening here. So, and then she's like grabbing onto her dad and holding him, and I've got nothing left. You know, they take my mom and everybody. It's really, really fucking sad. It's really fucking sad. Um, but they have to. They do have to kill him, and then we move on to I think what a lot of people. This was very surprising in the theater. This was very out of nowhere, and I think this is something everyone remembers from this movie. But is this like, um, you know, I don't know what jazz club rendition. I don't want to say jazz club, but like a fucking Frank Sinatra. I don't know what the hell they call these guys, but this like rendition of Disturbed songs, but done all like classically. That's really funny. Like I never heard any of these songs before this movie came out, but really great choice of music there. Great choice of Johnny Cash in the opening. Great choice. The music choices in this movie are another huge part of the success of this film. The Disturbed stuff was so funny and so unique and original at that time. Like we hadn't really heard parodies like that at that time, and it just fit the tone of the film and that scene, and it made us all laugh, and yeah, so great stuff. And then we've got Steve, who always plays a dick in every fucking movie I've ever seen this guy in, and you always want this guy dead. He just plays that character so well. This actor, man, he's that actor that does his part so well that I can't believe that he's anything but that character when he leaves the set. Like for some reason, like he's the guy I want to go up to in public and be like, "You're a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit. I've never seen you be a good guy in anything, and I'm convinced you are that guy in real life." But yeah, he's pretty funny in this. He's just someone you want dead. And when it happens, it's a cathartic moment. They even have like the line of like, "Oh shit," and they kind of like, "She did it. She killed you." I love that scene between Steve and Sarah Polley where he's like, "Oh, you know, if I turn into one of these things, you have my permission to blow my fucking head off." And she's like, "Oh, don't worry about that. I got that." It's great. And you know that's coming up later. That's foreshadowing, but it is very satisfying to see it happen. How fast she reacts, and just boom, no worries at all. And then, of course, Ving Rhames' response to that. Great stuff all around. And then we get the celebrity sniper scene, which is just great. The Burt Reynolds one, the freaking who's the first one? Jay Leno, and then the Rosie O'Donnell thing, and he's like, you know, tell him to get Rosie, and then he's like, the other guy, who's kind of he's comedic relief for the film. He's like, "Nah, that's too easy. Give him something harder." That's fucked up. It's a fatter. She's fat. She's fat. She's a bigger target. That's pretty funny. And then the guy goes down and he's admitting that he's like a homosexual and kind of letting CJ and his other guy know that he's homosexual and how he found out he's homosexual. And yes, they just have to say it feels like a gag from an Adam Sandler movie. That's what it feels like in that moment when he's just sitting there telling him about his first interaction when he knew he was gay, and these guys are freaking out. I don't know why that scene it feels like a character from a Billy Madison or something, but it's pretty funny. And I like how Jake Weber's character in this movie says this line where they're like, "Well, what was the job you were worst at?" And he's like, "Being a husband." And then he's like, "What is the best job that you were great at?" And he was like, "Being a dad." And all the girls look over at him like, "Oh, I want to fuck him now. I want to date him. I want to marry him. I want to have 10,000 of his babies." Yeah, maybe in 2004 this was a thing, but nowadays, in my experience, now maybe some of you guys have had different experiences, but the dad thing, people are like, "Oh man, you're going to have like that dad thing going for you now. Girls are just going to melt when they see you with your daughters being sweet and public." I love my kids more than absolutely anything in the world, and I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks when I'm out with them at all. But my kids have been kryptonite to women. Like, And when I say that, I don't mean like, oh, it's made them weak and fall for me. The exact opposite. My kids have done zero for my game. Nothing. Worse than nothing. Before my kids, I got noticed right and left by women. But now that I have kids and I walk through the store, they probably think I'm married, maybe. I don't know what it is. But regardless, when I walk through the store with those kids, even when I don't have them, a lot of the times now, it's almost like they can fucking sense it. Because I don't really look any different than I did before I had my kids. And for some reason, I have got like zero game these days. It's really weird. It's really weird. When I walk, it's probably the gray. That's probably what it is. But in this movie, when that happened in the moment, and they're all like, oh, he's a dad. Maybe they're just feeling sorry for him because they pretty much know his kids are probably dead at this point. But the way Sarah Polley and the way other people look at him, they're like, oh, like I want to fuck this guy. Like, oh, what a sweetheart. What a great guy. Yeah. I talk about my kids today with girls, and they're just like, oh, he's got kids. Yikes. Run. Abort. Abort. Anyway. And now, the pregnant girl, how does she live so long bitten? Because everybody else changes in like 5 seconds. It's like the embryonic fluid or something keeping her going longer than other people. I don't know. But yeah, that dude who comes in, Trash Can Man, he fucking turns in like 2 seconds. The fat woman, she turns in like 2 seconds. So how the pregnant chick stays alive for days, or however the hell long it is, but it's definitely days, is beyond me. And then Luda, that's her name, right? Luda. And then that girl comes in, and she gets killed. He's protecting his baby, and then the baby comes out, and it's a zombie baby, and that's a pretty good moment in the movie, just to see a zombie baby. And then they try to send Andy over food with the dog, and Andy, at this point, I don't buy that they didn't tell Andy that if you get bit, you'll turn. I just don't buy it, because when he talks back to them, they have a radio. They don't know. Like, I don't know. That to me, it just seems like something they would write on that board. Like, hey, don't get bit. It'll kill you. Whatever. They are fully aware that this has happened at this point. So to me, to say that they haven't told him yet, no, absolutely not. Because they bring they take the dog and they bring him over, and the dog brings him a radio so they can communicate for the first time. It's the first time you hear his voice, but they have the board. They're writing back and forth to each other. So maybe. I'm not saying it's not possible. That seems like a really weird thing to let out. Like, they should be exchanging notes. Like, hey, what have you found out? What have you found out? Oh, we had to kill someone today because they were bit. And like, oh, bites kill you? You know what I mean? That seems like really important information to be exchanging with like your best bud across the way. So, yeah, I don't know. That just doesn't work for me. I think it's stupid. But anyway. And then Nicole loses her goddamn mind and has to drive over and try to get Chips. Come here, Chips. And so they drive over, and then they go on a rescue mission. And Andy is turned, and then they have to blow Andy's head off. So we get a head explosion here. It's CG, but it looks good. And then Steve locks their ass out, but Sarah Polley lets them back in. And this is where you're just like, I'm done with this guy. I can't stand it. Then they build these freaking armored vehicles, and they say, fuck it, we're getting out of here. The zombies get into the mall. In this movie, they don't have to clear out the mall, but they do have to deal with it. They don't get a biker gang. I mean, this is a totally different movie. I mean, that's just it. This is a movie that remakes itself. It's trying to be its own thing, for sure. It like uses the mall setting. There's a black cop. There's a pregnant girl. You got Kevin Forey on the television saying the no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth, and then you got a Tom Savini cameo as the cop. Like, you've got connections for sure, but this is very much its own thing. very much its own thing, which is great. But anyways, they get in their own trucks and they drive up on out of there. They got chainsaws through the side. They got a propane tank with a flare grenade in it, and then a flare in it, which they made into like a bomb, and they blow up all these bodies. There's hundreds of fucking bodies being thrown. CJ is a badass in this movie, man. When he gets out there and he's fighting these things, and then his death is sad but kind of funny at the same time. When he like, goes and he has this big heroic moment, and he just like looks over and he's like, "Fucking figures," and he blows the whole thing. That's such a great scene. CJ's the shit, man. I love him. I fucking love him in this movie. And then Michael, we find out, got bit, which is really sad. That whole fucking scene where Ving Rhames' truck gets swerves, and then that dude cuts the blonde babe, in half. Oh man, that shit's brutal. He takes the chainsaw to her. Oh, that's so fucked up. But they wake up and like everybody's dead inside. And then and then we have the moment where, of course, Steve gets his head blown off by by Sarah Polley. And then another issue I think I have is Sarah Polley's character here. I don't really feel like she ever grieves the loss of her partner much. We don't really get that from her. She seems very collected. She never seems to be overwhelmed by how much the world has changed and the people that she loves are dead. We just don't get that in this movie. She like seems to be on Jake Weber's dick, Michael's dick, in like 5 seconds. There's just a bit of a disconnect. You would think there'd be more talk between them of, you had kids, I had no idea, like you were married. I know some people would think that would slow this film down, and maybe it would, and it would kill the pacing, but I think it's like one of those you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't kind of things. If you throw that in there, it slows down the pace of the film, but the character development is stronger, and I feel a little bit more for the characters, but if you leave that out, then the film moves along faster, and I'm having a more enjoyable time as an experience. So I don't know, it is one of those tough call decisions, because I don't know, like, it's going to piss off some people but it'll please others. Those are the kinds of decisions you have to make in filmmaking. But for me personally, I do like a little more character development. I'm okay with things slowing down for just a couple minutes to have them hash it out, and her to cry, to have her emotions about the death of her lover, whatever. But that just doesn't happen. You got to deal with it. Moving on. And then they sail off into the sunset. We get some titties in the credits. This guy, they find his tape that they're recording over, and we get a couple, not a couple, but a pair of tits, 2 tits together. But we get those. They're very nice. And then we get to the island, and I like how the movie ends, and if you were to get up and leave, you would think they sailed off to the sun, off into the sunset, and probably survived. They got to the island and they're going to be okay. But if you stay through the credits, you find that they got there and the island was overrun by these zombies, and more than likely they did not live. I would have loved, ideally, imagine if Day of the Dead, a Day of the Dead remake, was a sequel to this, on the island. Or fuck, man, just change it up. Island of the Dead. Make a sequel to Dawn of the Dead, Island of the Dead. And it's, Sarah Polley and Ving Rhames, whoever fucking survived this movie, and have them on the island trying to fight to survive. I would have watched that, especially if it was directed by Snyder again. Fuck yeah, that'd be awesome. In fact, I'd watch one now. Like where they, it's 10 years later or 15 years later, and they're living in post-apocalyptic world. Maybe Army of the Dead, maybe they'll show up and it'll be a sequel to Dawn of the Dead. How fucking cool would that be? How unexpected would that be? Make it some M. Night Shyamalan fucking split shit where Bruce Willis shows up at the end and you're like, wait, what? This is a sequel to this? Could you imagine if that happened at Army of the Dead? if that was actually a sequel to Dawn of the Dead and they didn't like show up until like the last scene and you were like, wait a minute, that's fucking them from Dawn of the Dead. How crazy would that be? Now I like want that to happen. That's funny. Anyways, all right, guys. So Dawn of the Dead, we're done with the Dead franchise. That was fun, but moving on. I have tons of shit lined up. Look forward to it. Talk to you then. Adios.